Hey friends, it's Ruben with Hi-Fi MIDI. Thanks for joining me for this review of Easy Bass by TuneTrack. As many of you already know, I own many bass sample libraries. It's who I am and it's what I do. Ample Sound, Scarby, Trillion, Moto Bass, Orange Tree samples. I can't remember all of them, and I'm not trying to boast. My point is that I already own more bass sample libraries than I need. So I held off on buying Easy Bass because I couldn't justify spending $179 on another bass. Maybe a guitar, but a bass? There are so many great ones on the market. What could Easy Bass possibly have to offer? Is it worth $179? And is it the best bass sample library of 2020? Well, I finally pulled the trigger and purchased it, and now I hope to answer that question with this video. So let's get started. So I can't go through all the features of Easy Bass because there are so many, but I'm going to try to cover as much as I can with the time I have. Easy Bass comes with two basses. Easy Bass Modern, sampled from a high-end alembic bass used by many pros, and Easy Bass Vintage, sampled from a vintage Fender J bass. Let's listen to Easy Bass Modern. The default articulation is sustain. My first reaction when hearing the sound of this was, holy crap, this sounds so natural and beautiful. There's something about it that just hits the ears with a high degree of excellence. And this is just the DI sound. As a keyboardist, the response is just perfect. The hammer-on pull-off decays realistically. The dynamics, from soft to loud, are very smooth. I love that string buzz. Many of you will be pleased to know that Easy Bass's lowest pitch is an A, so you can get some good range out of it. It was also easy to figure out most of the playing techniques. For example, G0 triggers legato, which softens the attack and smoothens out note transitions as long as it gets held. G0 triggers slide up from any position except the highest note. F0 triggers slide down from any position except the lowest note. In this case, Easy Bass totally ignores natural playback in favor of practicality. You can't slide down from an open E string on a real bass. But Easy Bass switches to the A string to make it possible. F#0 triggers a slide from note to note. And the slide range can actually go from the lowest note to the highest note and back down. That's pretty cool. I love that ghost notes can be triggered via E0. D#0 triggers a loud mute that cuts off the notes while you're playing. I found this feature fun to use and inspiring. D0 repeats the last note that you played. This is probably one of the most natural sounding repeats. It doesn't sound like it's repeating the same sample. This is what you want in a virtual instrument. C# triggers the middle finger in case the audience doesn't notice your solo. Actually, bass players often alternate between index and middle finger when playing fast repeated notes. Easy Bass does that automatically. There's a small tonal difference between the fingers that it's hard for most people to detect, but it makes for slightly more realistic playback. This forces only a middle finger sample, if I'm not mistaken. B-1 triggers the slap pop articulation. Now keep in mind that a bass player will slap the lower strings while popping the high strings. Slap can be combined with ghost notes mutes, and you can slide from a slap. Which reminds me, if you're enjoying this video so far, please slap that like button. A sharp -1 triggers harmonics, which are resampled to play chromatically, meaning you can play them on any key. Again, this favors practicality over realism, which is good in this case. A -1 is the polyphony trigger, which lets you play any combination of notes without cutting any off. Now for the next ones, I have to drop the octave on my keyboard because this is out of playing range. G sharp -1 is a tap articulation. This is good for fast and smooth riffs. This can also be combined with slides. F -1 and G -1 are fret up and down triggers. However, I have no idea what these do, and I couldn't find them in the user manual, which was frustrating. D sharp -1 and E -1 trigger a loud mute and ghost note, respectively. However, these cause the entire fretboard to play those sounds rather than simply cutting off the sustained samples when pressed, like D sharp 0 and E sharp 0 do. Now you can skip over this part, but I'm just going to play the sustained samples of the vintage bass so you can hear the tone. Now, as suspected, this has more of a mid-heavy sound to it, less on the bottom end, so more focused, maybe for jazz or funk style music. I should also mention that the vintage bass does not come with slap and pop articulations, and that's pretty disappointing. I should comment that I absolutely love the visuals of this plugin. The overall design and illustrations are stunning, and the color scheme is easy on the eyes. I do wish the bass was facing the other way because I like to see it from the player's angle. However, I think most people won't really care about that. At the top right next to the library menu is the preset menu, which opens up different types of controls depending on the type of sound TuneTrack was going for. While you can adjust these parameters and save them as presets, you can't open up your own combination of parameters and customize it that way. That's pretty limiting. But if you're like me, it won't matter much because I don't go crazy with tone customization. But if you're a sound designer, you might find it frustrating. Let's listen to some presets. This one is Deep Amp. It has pickup settings. Compression, amp drive, color, and sub bass. Sub bass adds a sine wave to your sound to give you a little bit more body and lower end. Here's distorted metal. At the bottom, you'll find the song track that lets you build your song with an easy bass before exporting the MIDI to your DAW. This feature works perfectly with the Grooves tab, which I'll get into in just a bit. I found it very intuitive, meaning all the things I wanted to do were easy to figure out without the manual. You can create an overview of your song on the song parts section by adding intro, verse, chorus, etc. Just like Superior Drummer. You can also set chord changes by double-clicking on the chord block and selecting your chord. This will change the key of the MIDI groove you set in place. This is a huge time saver. The song track can be played independently of your DAW or simultaneously. Let's take a look at the Grooves tab. Easy Bass comes with lots of MIDI grooves that are categorized by genre, playing style, type, signature, and resolution. This is a great system for filtering out what you're looking for. You can also choose tap to find, which lets you click in a rhythm using your mouse. And this is going to give you a list of matching results by percentage. And you can listen to them by clicking the play button. You can also favorite them. And by the way, this is the results menu. You can favorite them. You can change their tempo, half value, 1 times or double tempo. You can change their velocity. And once you're satisfied with the one you want, you just simply drag it into your song. Again, you can change the key. You can change it mid-groove. This is a very useful feature. And then once you're done with that, you simply drag it into your DAW. If you want to create your own bass grooves, go into the grid editor menu. I'm going to delete this really quick. And you have this beautiful display. It's like a MIDI editor. It is a MIDI editor, but it's designed specifically for bass. I'm going to change the preset really quickly. So up here, you click the pencil. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And it works just like a normal MIDI editor. In order to delete a note, you just simply click on it one more time. I love that. I want this to loop, so I'm going to try to copy and paste this really quick. Now, if I wanted to mute these, I go down here, click on damping, and the higher values are going to damp it even more, but I love that you can damp it gradually. So I'm going to click here. So you get the idea. If I spend more time on it, this can become more detailed. But I think the system, the way that it works is very easy to use, and it's pretty fun, and it works very well. Let's continue. I'm going to spend very little time on these. Drum and keys, you can drag a keyboard part in here or a drum part, and it's going to match a bass groove that's already in here that is similar or fits well with that style. This works pretty well for the most part. I found that when I'm doing complex keyboard parts, it doesn't sound as musical as I want it to. But for more simple stuff, like single note bass lines, it works really well. And lastly, if you're a bassist, you're going to love audio to MIDI conversion. Drag in your recorded bass track and convert it to MIDI notes that trigger easy bassist samples. Audio to MIDI conversion isn't new, but it's such a time-saving feature, and the fact that it's a feature in this plugin just adds to this value. You can also drag in drum audio, which will detect hits and create a MIDI track with the same rhythm. This is perfect for creating bass lines that sync with your groove, or simply having a rhythm template to begin creating your own groove. My final thoughts are, yes, this is well worth the asking price for the quality of samples, the ease of use, the number and types of features that make music creation easier and fun, and the overall cohesiveness of the product, meaning all the parts work so well together. Is it the best bass sample library of 2020? I give a very tentative yes. With one major caveat: everything is wonderful about this except for the fact that TuneTrack did not sample every fret. I am so disappointed about this part. I'm not sure if they did this to save on storage or because it would create a programming headache for their engineers, but I love the sound a real bass makes on the high notes of the lower strings. They start to sound more mellow and warm. Easy Bass uses the same samples on each string for notes of matching register. Let me show you. So the best way to show you is by clicking on the actual fret. So here's a high D string on the lowest string. This, at this point, would sound very mellow. That is the same sample as this. This D right here. This is the same sample. Same sample. That should not be the case. This is not realistic, and it takes away from some potentially beautiful tones. For that reason, I would recommend this plugin for people who are trying to create music that uses the lower notes of a bass, which is probably the majority of people. Other than that, I love this bass, and I think it has set the bar really high feature-wise, though I won't use it for every scenario. I hope some of my favorite sample library companies follow suit. Well, friends, thanks for watching. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe, and click the notification bell to keep this channel going. Comment your thoughts, share this video with the world, and take care.